I'm emerging from the jungle of branches, and in case you don't believe it, this is an air layering. This part is an air layering from this tree. This is a Deshojo that we grow in our greenhouse, and it is a Deshojo, as you can see from the new red leaves. The new leaves are always red, but in the summer they turn green. So this is the habit of Deshojo. And look at the size of this trunk, thick trunk. It must be every bit 3 inches big. And the roots have just gone through the pots and into the ground. Look at the vigorous roots here. So Deshojo grow very vigorously. And this has been grown as a sacrificial branch to thicken the trunk. And this will become another air layering should I wish to make it an air layering. And this was the main tree. So you must be wondering what happened to this. This I cut off. This was growing a fork tree, and this was air layered in late July of 2018. But because I did it rather late, if you do your air layerings in April, they will root by June or July. But because I did this air layering in July of last year, it did not form roots till about September or October, by which time I felt it was a bit too late to separate the air layering, because through the winter the roots could die. So I waited for the following spring, and I remember removing this it was I think early May of this year. I cut it off there, sealed it, and put this in sphagnum moss. And look at that, in just 3 months. Look at all the roots which have come from the air layering. And to show you that I'm not bluffing you, that is the bottom of the trunk, single trunk, and that is what was cut off from here. This was cut off from here, from there. So this branch is pretty tall. It is every bit 4 meters or 5 meters. That was the original tree. So I air layered that, and this is what I got, and these are the roots that have formed. When I transition it, once the root ball has formed roots, I still plant it in sphagnum moss. That is the trick. Don't be in a rush to plant it in soil straight away. It is planted in sphagnum moss, and once the roots have filled this pot that I put it in, I can then put it in proper compost. Before I proceed to put this tree up, this air layering up, my colleague Thibaut has just mentioned to me that this parent plant was 3 years ago an air layering of another Deshojo. So it is an air layering of an air layering of an air layering. So this is like the son, and this is the grandson of the original air layering. So you can keep doing this ad infinitum. Okay. Another few tips I'll show you. When I transitioned the root ball into this pot, I deliberately chose a tall ceramic pot because this air layering is so big. If I put it in a plastic pot, it would topple over. In any case, I tied it around the post of this greenhouse. And a deep pot like this makes the root ball more stable. You can see it is quite stable like that. So these are little tricks and tips that you can learn from me. And now that this root ball has established itself so well, this is the stage where I can put the compost. And this is just ordinary sphagnum moss peat and orchid bark. This is our standard base compost. A number of you have asked me in my other videos, why don't I use bonsai compost at this stage? Well, I could use bonsai compost, but I don't want to waste it. Because these are just ordinary trees still in the process of being grown, I just use ordinary compost. This is our based bonsai compost, which is the pine bark and sphagnum moss peat. This is quite adequate. And I would say that in 2 or 3 weeks, this pot will be full of roots. I won't do anything. I will wait for the spring And in February, I will then take it out of this pot and start combing the roots so the roots will spread well and become a nebari. And this is going to be a twin trunk tree. If I didn't want it to be a twin trunk tree, I can tear it apart and make 2 single trees. Now this point I could make a twin trunk from this, or I could make a twin trunk from this. So I could go, as I said, ad infinitum, endlessly producing more and more trees. And because Deishojo maples are such a favorite on the nursery, I can't produce enough of them. So they're endless trees. So this has been produced literally in 3 months from cutting it off and into here. I have just spotted a few other trees which have rooted, so I'm going to show you how I'm going to cut them off. So if you follow me, I will show you the next stage of taking off an air layering. This is a European hornbeam that I started air layering years and years ago. So I keep air layering from the top till I come to the base. So I've already made about 3 air layerings from this tree. When I make air layerings with hornbeam, I partly shape the tree into a nice informal upright shape so that it's almost ready for bonsai, and then do the air layering. The base, if you look at it, is absolutely stupendous, beautiful. I leave these branches on as sacrificial branches to thicken the tree, but look at them, look at that beautiful base. So I could do an air layering from here and have a tree this high. So this is going to be one bonsai, and then another bonsai here, and I've got a bonsai here. This one again I did in July or August of 2018, and as I said earlier about the Deishojo air layering, if you do it late in the summer, you may not get enough time for it to transition, to establish enough roots to survive the winter. So although it produced some roots, I haven't cut it off. I haven't had a look since last August, so the moment of truth will come. Let me open the bag and see if it has got enough roots to cut off or not. So if you come close, there are some roots. These are the roots of the air layering. It's calloused a lot. Look at the beautiful callus. But because I know hornbeams are such vigorous trees, I know that even with a couple of strong roots, it will make it. So I'm just going to put this bag back so that it will hold the moss together. I don't want the moss to drop off. And I'm going to proceed to cut this tree from about here. This is a new Teflon saw made in Sweden. I don't want to advertise it, but most of these tree saws are very good, and I'm sure this is very good too. So I'm just going to do a straight cut, nothing fancy. Very sharp saw. And the trunk must be every bit 2 inches in diameter, maybe even more. And it's going through like butter. Oh, timber. Okay. Now, to show you the next stage is quite important, and I'll explain to you what I'm going to do next, and more important, why I do it. So this is the air layering I've severed. It's a European hornbeam, and it's so vigorous that the leaves are massive. But once it's put in a bonsai pot and growing as bonsai, the leaves will become about at least a quarter the size. Now, what do I do next? Should I just put it in this pot with sphagnum moss and grow it? The chances of it growing are quite good, but I'm not going to do it just like that. I am going to remove some of the leaves. And the reason why I want to remove some of these leaves is because if you leave all the leaves on, there are such a lot of leaves that they all need water to sustain them, to make them turgid. If they don't get enough water, these leaves will just shrivel and it will weaken the plant, and this air layering may not succeed. So I always like to remove the leaves, because by removing the leaves, I'm going to make less demands on the new roots that have formed from the air layering. So don't worry about what I'm doing. We're just removing the leaves so that it will improve the chances of survival for this air layering. And in any case, many of these leaves and branches will probably not be needed, because we're going to style the tree in the way we want it to grow. So they would become redundant in any case. So I would say I'm going to remove maybe 75 to 90% of the existing foliage, so that it doesn't put stress on the young root system. This is something that not everyone will teach you to do. This is something that I had to discover the hard way, when I used to wonder why certain air layerings are not successful. And this is what I realized, that it was making too many demands on the roots, so the foliage was not compatible with the root system. I think it makes sense, because the less demands you make on the root system, that means you don't need to ask the roots to pump up water to the leaves to sustain the leaves. The roots will get a better chance to grow. See what a lot of foliage I've removed. Look at all that. I removed all that. Made the tree almost bare. I'll leave some leaves, because if I have some leaves, it will help to draw the sap up. So it's acting as a sap puller. Just as in pines, you leave the candles or the needles, some of them, to suck the water up. So these little bits of green that are left will do just that. So this tree has the makings of a very nice bonsai. There's some movement there. We can cut this or grow it in a bigger tree and do more air layering. So let's look at the roots again, close up, and see what the roots are doing. There you are. You can see the roots. There's quite a lot of root here. Quite a lot of roots. So I think I'm quite happy that it will produce more roots once I put it in the moss. So I don't have to worry. Remove all this foliage, and then we will decide the shape of the tree later on. So it goes in this sturdy pot, and the next stage is to put, this is New Zealand sphagnum moss that we buy from our wholesalers. This is sphagnum moss, in case you're wondering what sphagnum moss is. Put it in that same pot. And very important, I then stand it in a bucket of water, but I don't fill the bucket completely. I'm ready. Now, in case you don't know what sphagnum moss is, this is sphagnum moss. And it is sold in garden centers in the UK for growing hanging baskets, because they line the basket with this moss, and the roots of the bedding plants go into the moss. It acts as a compost and it grows very well. They also add compost to it as well, but it's mainly to prevent the soil washing out of the basket. So the sphagnum moss is used for hanging baskets, so it is hanging basket moss. But it is not the moss that you scrape off the ground. This is not sphagnum moss. This is moss that grows on the surface of the ground, and this is what we put on top of the bonsai for surface decoration. So this is a different type of moss. Although I'm sure you can use it for the same purpose, but it hasn't got the thread-like structure that sphagnum moss has. So as I was saying, after you've potted it up, This is the sort of bucket we use. We stand it in a bucket and we just fill about 1 or 2 inches of water in the bucket so that it never runs dry. And I can bet you anything, in 2 months this entire pot will be congested and filled with roots. So this is a further explanation to show you how we do successful air layerings. And it is so easy. So you get a ready-made plant with thick 2-3 inch diameter trunks. I've done European hornbeam with trunks as thick as 6 or 8 inches in diameter, and they're always successful. So these are the final tips of air layering, and if you follow some of these little tricks that I've shown you, I can guarantee you a lot of success. So enjoy your experiments and have fun with bonsai. Thank you.